The Castle by Franz Kafka. Chapter 18. I am your narrator. Then, as he was looking round aimlessly, Kay saw Frieda far away at a turn of the passage. She behaved as if she did not recognize him and only stared at him expressionlessly. She was carrying a tray with some empty dishes in her hand. He said to the servant, who, however, paid no attention whatever to him, the more one talked to the servant, the more absent-minded he seemed to become, that he would be back in a moment, and ran off to Frieda. Reaching her, he took her by the shoulders, as if he were seizing his own property again, and asked her a few unimportant questions with his eyes holding hers. But her rigid bearing hardly as much as softened. To hide her confusion, she tried to rearrange the dishes on the tray and said, "What do you want from me? Go back to the others." "Oh, you know whom I mean. You've just come from them. I can see it." Kay changed his tactics immediately. The explanation mustn't come so suddenly and mustn't begin with the worst point, the point most unfavorable to himself. "I thought you were in the tap room," he said. Frieda looked at him in amazement and then softly passed her free hand over his brow and cheeks. It was as if she had forgotten what he looked like and were trying to recall it to mind again. Even her eyes had the veiled look of one who was painfully trying to remember. "I've been taken on in the tap room again," she said slowly at last, as if it did not matter what she said, but as if beneath her words she were carrying on another conversation with Kay, which was more important. "This work here is not for me. Anybody at all could do it. Anybody who can make beds and look good-natured and doesn't mind the advances of the boarders, but actually likes them. Anybody who can do that can be a chambermaid. But in the tap room, that's quite different. I've been taken on straight away for the tap room again, in spite of the fact that I didn't leave it with any great distinction. But, of course, I had a word put in for me. But the landlord was delighted that I had had a word put in for me to make it easy for him to take me on again. It actually ended by them having to press me to take on the post. When you reflect what the tap room reminds me of, you'll understand that. Finally, I decided to take it on. I'm only here temporarily. Peppy begged us not to put her to the shame of having to leave the tap room at once. And seeing that she has been willing and has done everything to the best of her ability, we have given her a 24 hours extension. "That's all very nicely arranged," said Kay. "But once you left the tap room for my sake, And now that we're soon to be married, are you going back to it again? There will be no marriage, said Frieda. Because I've been unfaithful to you? Asked Kay. Frieda nodded. Now look here, Frieda, said Kay. We've often talked already about this alleged unfaithfulness of mine. And every time you've had to recognize, finally, that your suspicions were unjust. And since then, nothing has changed on my side. All I've done has remained as innocent as it was at first, and as it must always remain. So something must have changed on your side, through the suggestions of strangers or in some way or other. You do me an injustice in any case, for just listen to how I stand with those two girls. The one, the dark one. I'm almost ashamed to defend myself on particular points like this, but you give me no choice. The dark one, then, is probably just as displeasing to me as to you. I keep my distance with her in every way I can, and she makes it easy. No one could be more retiring than she is. Yes, cried Frieda. The words slipped out as if against her will. Kay was delighted to see her attention diverted. She was not saying what she had intended. Yes, you may look upon her as retiring. You tell me that the most shameless creature of them all is retiring. And incredible as it is, you mean it honestly. You're not shamming, I know. The Bridge Inn landlady once said of you, I can't abide him, but I can't let him alone either. One simply can't control oneself when one sees a child that can hardly walk, trying to go too far for it. One simply has to interfere. Pay attention to her advice for this once, said Kay, smiling. But that girl, whether she's retiring or shameless, doesn't matter. I don't want to hear any more about her. But why do you call her retiring? Asked Frieda. Kay considered this interest of hers a favorable sign. Have you found her so? Or are you simply casting a reflection on somebody else? Neither the one nor the other, said Kay. I call her that out of gratitude, because she makes it easy for me to ignore her. And because if she said even a word or two to me, I couldn't bring myself to go back again, which would be a great loss to me. For I must go there for the sake of both our futures, as you know.